Hey guys, this is my third video, so I figured I'd take a little bit of time today and talk about the method that I'm using to learn Japanese. I'm not really going to go over the whole thing in one video. It's actually going to be a series of videos. So I guess I'll go ahead and start with the topic of immersion. Now, any of you that are just starting learning a language may not understand the full concept of what immersion is. You might know the definition of the word, but when it comes to learning a language, it essentially means that you surround yourself with the language, so in this case, Japanese. And you do everything to emulate a Japanese environment that you possibly can. And the basic idea is that you get as much exposure to the language over time as possible. So, immersion is super important when you're learning language, and I know it's certainly helped me. I didn't actually start off using immersion, but I noticed that once I did, I started picking things up a lot quicker. And immersion, covers things like listening to the radio, watching TV, even things like changing your operating system to Japanese if you're willing to be that dangerous. You want to emulate being in Japan, and obviously for most people that's not really an option. If you're in Japan, I suppose you're lucky. So for those of you that don't have the fortune to be in Japan, what you do essentially is just create an environment where you can surround yourself by as much Japanese as possible. Some examples of things that you could do is listening to Japanese radio stations, listening to Japanese music. I also recommend listening to a lot of talk shows. And a lot of you are going to ask straight away, well, why am I going to listen to all that stuff if I can't understand it? And that's a good question, and a fair one. But the answer to that is you don't need to understand it. If you think about how you learned your original language, or your native language, which for a lot of you is probably English, you learned it by essentially immersion, exposure to the language, constant exposure, your parents talking to you, people communicating around you back and forth, and you just pick up words. And we're essentially doing the same thing here, only in this case, obviously, to learn a new language. So I'm going to include some links at the bottom in the description of some of the websites that I use for Japanese radio and television and so forth. So the first one of those it's called Simul Radio, and you can reach it at simulradio.jp. It's got probably 50 to 100 different radio stations that you can listen to, and not all of them are active 24/7, so you have to sort of pick through them and figure out which one you like best. The beauty of having so many different radio stations is you don't really like the way that one sounds, or one sounds kind of crappy, or you're not into the type of music that they play, or whatever. Just choose another one. Another one is the podcasts from TBS Radio JP. They place up their podcasts. Some of them are weekly, some of them are daily. There's a bunch of different ones. And they're all downloadable in MP3 format. The nice part about that is that you can save them to your phone or your iPad or what have you, and you can listen to them repeatedly. And the advantage to doing that is that, of course, you hear the same thing repeatedly, and you eventually start to pick up speech patterns, and you pick up what they're talking about. And once you've heard something a couple of different times, you begin to pick up more and more of it, to the point where you can pick out one word or pick out a phrase and go look it up and see what it means. And that's extremely useful after a while, so I highly recommend doing that. There is another sort of radio station website, or internet radio website, that I use as well. It's called Tuneincalm, and it actually has radio stations from all over the world. But to find the Japanese ones, you just need to go to by location. It's up top, and then Asia, and then Japan. You can even subset by city if you wanted to do that. I've also heard a lot of people say that iTunes has tons of podcasts if you change your location to Japan. If you use iTunes, I fully encourage you to go and look that up and see what you can find there. In terms of video, of course, there's always YouTube. YouTube's got tons of videos in Japanese. You could probably just search Japanese and find something. If you happen to know of a Japanese band, maybe that you heard on the radio, you can look that up. Or there's all kinds of different content available. Another one is sort of what I consider a Japanese equivalent to YouTube. It's called NicoVideo. It's a very good resource for Japanese video and tends to be predominantly Japanese video because it's a Japanese site. So I found that to be a invaluable resource in terms of videos, and a lot of times I can just go in there and just randomly click on something and find something entertaining. So there's lots of content there to go through as well. There's another website called NonStopTube, and essentially what it is it's almost like a wrapper for YouTube. People create playlists, as it were, for videos. And they create sets of videos, and they just link them all here on the site, and it's refreshed every day. It includes things like the top 100 in Tokyo and music videos, that is. And then it also includes all sorts of random stuff too, bits and clips from talk shows and game shows and what have you. And it's conveniently organized in a list that you can just kind of click play and forget it for a while. And it just cycles through, and it takes probably, an hour to go through one of those lists or more. It tends to vary a little bit. But that's an excellent resource as well. And again, I'll put the link to that in the description below. Other things you can do is you can change the programs on your computer to use Japanese whenever that's available. A lot of programs will have the ability to change the language for that program built right into them. So, for instance, Firefox, I know, has that ability. Google Chrome has that ability. Not so sure about Internet Explorer. I sort of try to stay away from that. But I do know Firefox and Chrome have that ability. So I've converted all my browsers to use Japanese. Change some of your home pages to use the Japanese version. For instance, google.co.jp, yahoo.jp, and there's always Japanese equivalents to pretty much any site out there. I've changed my Facebook to use Japanese. It's just one extra thing that you can do to, to keep yourself in the Japanese mood. If you're really daring and you're somewhat good with computers, I would also recommend changing your operating system to Japanese at some point. I've gone ahead and done that, and it's paid off immensely. It is a little bit challenging sometimes to decipher error messages when you can't, when you can't tell what's going on. I would recommend against doing this on a work computer because you definitely don't want to hamper your productivity there at all. But at the same time, as far as your home computer is concerned, if you're afraid of doing it, you could always set it up to dual boot, and there's tons of instructions out there on Google Sensei to do that. So, if you're somewhat of an advanced computer user or even intermediate, maybe check into installing a Japanese operating system. I get asked a lot what you can do at work, and the tricky part is to keep your work separated from your Japanese. So if you're going to study Japanese while you're working, you need to be able to do it while you're working, sort of passively, as it were. One thing that I do is I keep the radio going all the time, so I'm getting that exposure while I'm working. Now, another thing that I've done is, I have sort of my own little desk area that's just mine, so I've gone ahead and labeled, the objects around me in Japanese. I put denwa in the telephone, and whenever I go to pick up or use the telephone or answer it, I just sort of quickly say to myself, denwa, and pick it up and use it. So that's something to constantly reinforce, vocabulary and just Japanese in general. Put on headphones if you're not in a position where you can, label things and whatnot. I put on headphones and then listen to podcasts or Japanese radio. I'm a web developer, so one thing that I do in addition to that is I write all my comments in Japanese. I only tend to do that, though, on things that I solely work on. So if I'm working on something that's a shared resource that my other coworkers may have to go into and add their own things, I don't do that because I'm the only one there that speaks Japanese, and that pisses people off. So be careful with that if you're going to go that route. But if you can do it, I'd certainly recommend it. This video is starting to get a bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up right there. But do what you can to set up your immersion environment. Thank you for watching, and please hit subscribe. And thanks.